Thank you so much for this talk. I really appreciate the time that all of you, took to sort of share your thoughts on your thoughts and your expertise on this. For myself, it's been so interesting. Um, I know Luis and I had a pretty long back and forth in the chat. But for me, it's been so interesting because I, it's difficult to explain how I feel about um, I guess being a so-called underrepresented person within technology and within data. Um, I actually I'm trying to think of what I want to say first, but I guess essentially I'm just really thankful for this discourse because I think most companies, most venture capital, most people within our sector, for the most part, do not want to discuss this. Um, and I think that that in itself is incredibly problematic because if we don't address this, this is going to be a giant problem. I mean, problem to the point of, in the United States, until I believe maybe February in certain states, and I think still even today this is occurring. There are criminals that are being sentenced based on artificial intelligence. There are people whose intellectual capacity is tested based on artificial intelligence. Myself, I worked in big tech for a few years. And then over the pandemic, I decided to found a company, which, we started as this fun consumer tech company, a dating app, and it led down this rabbit hole, which is how I ended up in data and AI. This giant, rabbit hole, because we started having, talks to people, and then the accessibility community started being very vocal with us about their lack of using consumer tech products like dating apps and social platforms. And through that, I started trying to incorporate accessibility and neurodivergence actively within our company. And that was how I discovered there's no data sets that are holistic within these groups. And then when I had a CTO, and I'm going to shut up soon, LOL, sorry. When I had a CTO, our CTO was in charge of all of the stuff on the product and software side because I was acting as CEO. And I looked around one day, and none of our product or software looked like me. No one was a woman. We actually didn't even have anyone who wasn't living on the West Coast. I mean, it was almost to the point of outrageous. And we actually had to structure our recruiting significantly different in order to create a pipeline. Because what I noticed was, so there's certain statistics that I think are super relevant to the 8218, which Ryan perfectly articulated earlier. And one of the issues is that several studies that have been done have shown that people who identify as male are way more likely to apply for a job, for example, um, when they are 60% qualified. And women are much more statistically likely to apply to a job if they meet 100% of the standards listed. And so we actually tried several different platforms, and we tried several different phrasing of how we were going about the hiring process for software and product. One of them was, we didn't list anything. We didn't say, people from underrepresented groups encouraged to apply. We didn't say, if you don't fit 100% of the criteria, apply anyway. We had no language on some of those postings. Then we did other postings where we included that information, and the rate of diversity that we started having coming in, just adding those two parts, we ended up having over a 60% increase in people from diverse backgrounds. And a lot of these people were people who traditionally, I know for certain, would not have gotten a job in software or product, because either, perhaps their previous experience was internships because they had to work. Some of them were moms who were out of the workforce for a while, who were coming back into the workforce. Other people who were people who had done these really expensive tech programs, ended up back home. And then, of course, you have the circumstances that, a lot of millennials can relate to, which is, being very high in student debt, living with your parents, then a pandemic happens. What do you do? So we had a lot of people that were out of work. We had people who are neurodivergent. And I actually would have these interviews with people, and one of the reasons that I decided that I was going to essentially phoenix the company, so that I could, really focus full time on trying to create holistic AI, which is going to take me probably 4 to 5 years, but I'm totally here for it. But one of the reasons was I literally was privileged to work with who I consider to be a genius, who is neurodivergent on the autism spectrum. And because of the incredibly minute accommodations that this person needed, uh, even within falling into like way higher metrics than, other candidates, he was unable to get a job. So what frustrates me about the diversity and inclusion issue is that we are so focused on race, we're so focused on gender. The genius that I'm talking about that couldn't get a job because he's neurodivergent is a white male. You know, this is an issue for medical accommodations. This is an issue for veterans who have PTSD, who are coming into the pipeline. This is an issue who can't even come into the pipeline, by the way, in most cases in the United States because of varying degrees of barriers to entry. We're talking about women who, myself as a founder, I am a Black woman. I did not know when I became a tech founder that only 38 Black women prior to this year have raised more than $1 million in VC funding. So when I talk about the difference between bias and discrimination, this is what I'm talking about. So everyone has biases, completely understandable, but there is discrimination that is indirect just due to, how we've lived as a society. you know those practices are literally, you know a, it it's coming to a point now where I think that this absolutely needs to be addressed, which is why I think, it's incredible that your organization put this together. And it's also incredible, that we've all been able to convene here, and organizations like the Algorithmic Justice League, which I'm a part of. And, I just feel so thankful. But uh, yeah, we all really have to be all hands on deck with this. And I'm finally done speaking. Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it was really insightful. A couple of things I think that you're mentioning about hiring as well is it's always useful to, we don't know what you don't know. Some of those pointers about, making sure, having certain attention to detail about, certain ways things are, presented to others, I think is so important.
Yes, it is crazy, this stuff. A friend of mine, he's a pastor. And he's You know, he's black in skin color, and he's also a doctor and a professor of chemistry at Kent University. And he used the bathroom, he used the toilet, and a woman saw him go in and glared at him, and she waited outside until he came back out and confronted him and said, "This is a staff bathroom. This is like a few months ago. Like, this is a staff bathroom. You're not allowed to use that." I'm like, it's 2021. You know, like, just phenomenal that we have these so strong biases that we can't, overriding everything, all sense, all logic. Still, so much work to do.
Behavior is hard to change. You know, we're wired to resist change because any change is seen as a danger. So you know, we have to override that, but it and a lot of it is at the unconscious level. So the majority is at the unconscious level.
I hate to say it, Anna, but thank God for death.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, those the example that was presented in terms of how athletes are described, you know, we continue to perpetuate those biases, and journalism is really guilty at doing that, because every time someone is described in the paper, that is, you know, you might have the same crime occur. If it's white, it's high school, white high school, and it appears to be engaged in this crime. If it's you know, a person of color, then criminal, you know, perpetrating a crime in this area. So just the use of language, you know, keeps perpetrating those same prejudices and biases. So part of it is really becoming aware and start to change the language and demand a change in language and demand and ourselves, you know, be called out. We need allies to call out and say, hey, when we see bias and prejudice perpetrated, call it out in the moment, because a lot of the time the person doing it is not aware that they are doing it.
Calling it out is so powerful for climate change as well. Just pointing things out. You know, why are you doing that? What's that about? Manager. Everyone knows I can't pronounce names.
Hi, Richard. Thank you for having me. Yeah, manager.
Oh, it wasn't too bad then.
Not too bad, not too bad. Very good. Well, thank you for letting me come. I'm not a tech professional, so I'm a little intimidated right now, but I am a human development professional. So I teach mindfulness for UCLA, and I'm, you know, just training human development. But I'm writing a book right now, which this is why I was so interested when I saw this on LinkedIn to come. And my book is about optimizing the human software. And throughout all of my years of, you know, training, practicing, growing, healing, learning, teaching, guiding, all these, you know, the Buddha's teachings and the mindfulness teachings and psychology and business and, you know, all kinds of education and all that. So I've kind of synthesized it. And when I developed a model, a 5-stage model for human optimization, I realized, wait a minute, there is a model that existed before becoming optimized. So I found or discovered and created a model for humans who are stuck. You know, just stuck in unhappiness, misery, irritation, upsetness, and how does it happen? So I created the 5 stages of that. And so biases are huge, and how they form. And how the moment they form, the moment they come about, this talks about a lot of things from the brain perspective, how the brain has truth bias. It's not neuroscientists are telling us. Truth bias, confirmation bias, novelty bias, and of course all these other biases. But then, you know, with, for example, just the truth bias, anything that occurs to you internally Or someone says to you, if you don't have the mindset to investigate it, or you don't have extremely good information about it, we just accept it. That's the way the brain works. We accept it as truth. This is the truth. So how how many things do we go to find out if it's true or not? We don't. And then little by little, the clinging, the attachment, the preferences, the fantasies, the desires, and the rules and regulations and all kinds of, like the example of the bathroom we said. Yeah, we set this rule and we think it is absolute. We don't realize we made it up. We humans made it up, and then there is a priority about, look, this human needs to use the bathroom right now. That takes precedence over this rule we made up, So I'm learning all about this stuff, and I really wanted to hear how the human bias, what channels does it travel through, and how does it impact other humans? What other channels, which we're talking about the AI, how does it impact other humans' perspective about the planet, about other forms of beings, and us ourselves, and then what happens to the next generation? So I'm writing all about this stuff, and it's been fascinating to me. Anyway, I could talk about it for a long time.
Oh man, when's the book launch? We need to celebrate. We need to have a party.
Actually, I've been doing some presentations with some people circles, and a lot of different like psychologists and therapists, and even a genius autistic person in the tech told me, oh my God, manager, this is an incredible two models I have. The model of the human who's stuck in just being unhappy and picky and miserable and whatever, and the model of optimization. They're just really, so part one of the optimization is proper or essential knowledge that we do not get growing up, right? The first stage of the stuck model is information. This comes from anywhere, uninvestigated, biased information comes. We just pick it up. As the day we are born, we pick it up and we build our own business. My premise is that we design our own human software. No matter the genes and no matter how we learn things, from teaching, training, and watching people, I've seen, oh my God, everybody thinks this differently, slightly differently, even from the same culture or even from the same, background or family or whatever. Everybody's slightly different. So I realized, just like me, I don't, utilize Excel, for example, full potential features that it has, just a little bit, just a mundane level. There are features in our human software that we do not know how to use. We don't have the skills for it. We don't have the knowledge for the potential of it. And so we have to teach. We have to bring it out. We have to show what is this feature and how deep you can go, like the features of the heart, features of the compassion or the concern. Is so biased, right? It's just, if it's related to me, my child, my neighbor, somebody I like, I care for them. But the person who's driving, on the street, I don't care much about it. So it's a feature within our human software. We're not really deeply understanding, or I'm looking at it from the skillfulness or unskillfulness, right? That mental illness can change through this model, the perspective of mental illness. Instead of bad people and good people, skillful people, unskillful people, developed people, undeveloped people. So these two models, one, I realized, oh my God, I can't have judgments about them. The stuck model. I still have probably one of them. And, living through this software of the stuck model. And then the optimize can really change. So just in the first stage, giving essential proper knowledge, for example, death, right? Look, the bugs died, the king died, the emperor died, the grandfather died, the mother died. You know, the death doesn't even exist. It's just transformation of, you know, this physical body, physical everything deteriorates, and everything is supposed to deteriorate. Well, why are we so against it? And
Oh, yeah, our relationship with death. Don't get me started on that, right?
Can you
Terrible.
imagine? We can just change the notion of our reaction to death. And I have lost a son, so don't think I don't know anything about it.
I know. I imagine
the suffering that could be reduced. So anyway, that's the whole
no, it's brilliant. It's these stories, these concepts. I just imagine like people a few thousand years ago, like, you know, John turns to Jane and says, God, isn't life short? And she says, compared to what? But now we know that the universe is 14.5 billion years old. We know, oh my God, our life is so short. It's not. It's everything you're ever going to know. How is that short? It doesn't even make sense.
Yes. So this bias of in the algorithms and all that, though I'm not the expert in it, I will somehow bring it in and address it in the section of essentials to know about life, you know, and then so you become aware and you develop and you transform and then you optimize. So it's a very, very organic actually model, I think, with both of them that could be translated into other systems, not just the human system. So I'm working on it.
Very good. Come and guest blog for us.
I would love to. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yeah, but one of my questions was that, is there any way you guys who, I mean, probably not, but is there any way to include sort of like, you know, how we teach ethics or compassion, like to humanity? Is there any way to embed in the coding into the AI? Let's say I'm just, you know, I'm a very simple tech person compared to all of you. I learned from my son, he's a genius, he teaches me. So let's just say QuickBooks, just for, you know, make it simple. Is there any way that coding can be put into those programs where these regulations you're talking about that needs to be imposed or looked at, or the audit or whatever, that can do that, preventative rather than, you know, because we can do that, right? Humans are, you know, we learn from everywhere, but the AI, the robot,
I mean, there's a blunt instrument on this. I mean, decentralized autonomous organizations are the blunt instrument to try and embed decision-making through smart contracts into an organization, which are now legal in certain parts of the US, but that's you know, that's not nudging towards what you're going to say. I don't know if anybody wants to.
Well, one of the things that I mentioned on that, and I'm going to get the link, maybe somebody else grabs it faster than me. OpenAI created a hide and seek game. And then they imaged that hide and seek game. And what was amazing about that is they tried to create it with minimal rules and let it learn. Well, it learned how to break the rules so fast, and then it would break more rules, and it would break more rules, because the game is optimized, as most AIs are, to win or to achieve a value-based goal. There is no system that's sufficiently nimble enough to have multiple goals and to know how to achieve all of them or know how they intersect, unless it's programmed of how they intersect. And thus our goal orientation system as humans is the thing right now that makes us so distinct from programming. We can act suboptimally right now if we want to. If we want to stop and stop our work, stop being productive, stop adding the value we were focused on because we want to go hug our kids. And the systems that we have are unable to operate with suboptimal thinking embedded in those sorts of collective value optimizations, and without a set of rules fully coded in. And the thing is, you'll never think of all the rules. And thus the system is designed to figure out what you didn't think of and break it, because it's trying to achieve better and better. Does that make sense?
It definitely makes sense, but it sounds very much like a human being to me. Look, I have a 4-year-old niece who came over this weekend, and she tried to teach me a game that I don't know and she knows, and to play it. I could literally see her rigging the game to her own advantage. 4 years old. It was unbelievable. I'm like, oh my God. She kept winning, and I'm like, oh my God, you're rigging the game.
But isn't she doing that because she enjoys the winning? I mean, what Ryan's saying is that the human playing chess, Lee Sorel, he can never escape the fact that he's playing chess, and that chess is a beautiful game that we enjoy. Whereas the AI obviously doesn't know it's playing chess. It's just maths. It's not the same, right?
But no, but look, what Ryan just said, that AI will figure out what you haven't ruled, put in a rule for, and to break it. It sounds like the desire, the craving of the human.
That sounds from mobilization, though. That's
well, yeah, if I may. So the answer is your sorry, daughter, niece, I can't remember which one you said, but she's decided to break the rules and is singularly focused on winning, which is also, you're right, that's what the AI was doing. Most of us, however, play by a set of rules most of the time, unless we feel like we have the chance to change it. And that kind of goes back to that point that was made kind of an hour ago, which is, do we need regulation? Do we need rules? And the answer is we do need some rules, because there are none right now. And when there are none, everything's possible. And when everything's possible, bad things are possible, legal, allowed, done.
So AI will use the codes that you gave it to do something different than the codes that you gave it?
It's worse than that. If we take AlphaGo 0, AlphaGo 0, so here's the history you need to know. The game Go is created with a set of rules, been played for thousands of years. Google created AlphaGo. AlphaGo became the grandmaster in the entire world within 21 days of learning. They gave it all the rules, and they gave it histories of playing the game. That was AlphaGo. Now they've created a model called autocurriculum. That's AlphaGo 0. For those of you who don't know, AlphaGo 0 was simply told what's the goal of the game and the moves it's allowed to make, and that's it. AlphaGo 0 taught itself how to beat that previous machine within 3 days, learning with no guidance, no rules, no nothing. And what that should tell you is that machine learning has great capabilities, and those capabilities are probably beyond us to govern after the fact. And that's very scary.
in a closed system, though.
Well, fortunately, that's in a closed system, but what's keeping Google from turning that loose, to be honest? Nothing. There's no rules, there's no regulation. So I wrote a piece years ago. I'll put it in the chat, and I'm going to put my AlphaGo 0 piece in the chat as well. But here's the big problem. Technology is an autocracy. Now, what does that mean? The entire world, how often does the entire world agree on something? Never. The entire world agreed that we should not gene edit babies. The entire world, even places that most of us think are scary, basically said, we will not do this. 3 researchers in China, 1 in the United States, they got together, they gene edited. We thought it was 1 baby, it turned out it was 2. They're going to jail for 3 years. That's it. Any technology can be made by any single person at any point in time, and unfortunately, we love cool new technologies. So the problem with all of this is every technology could be created, whether we like it or not, whether it's good for society or not. And so in that context, that's a problem that we have to manage, and we're not prepared to do it.
Okay, I will continue training people to be good then.
Thank you.
That's what I could do. Thank you. But I have Dean. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to add something there. It's like, now I'm touching a lot of buttons here, actually. So it's like with this technology that we have a privilege to understand our past, the decision that we have made in our past, actually. And because it's all about data in, data out, bad data in, bad predictions out, bad result out. So if you put in the past data, and see what is comes out, like Amazon's and Facebook and all others big organization that they have put in past data and biased data, and then the result is like that. But we can learn it. This is AI is like for myself, that is speaking from my eye, that I feel like I can learn more about humanity from AI than a human, you know, because of I can put the past in the machine, and machine will like tell me this will happen, this will result happen, and what will happen? Discriminations, segregations, and like breaking people in different parts, and human being hasn't lost his value, and now we have created this tech that we can bring the value of the human being together, bring it back. So this is what I believe in, and this is, I really hope it happens. And this is all up to us, human being, because this technology, this tech is about connecting with people, collaboration with human beings, and yeah, this is what I believe in, and it will give us the good answer what it should be, or who we are actually, because subconscious, we learn from our experiences, and 90% we do, or 98% of things we do with our subconscious. We have like no clue what we are doing actually. But yeah,
it's a superpower and a super weakness. What do you think, Michelle?
Yeah.
Your cat is so cute, Dean.
Thank you so
Like
much.
I've been staring at it for the past few hours. Well, my question to the group here, and I'm really thankful that you all are okay with staying a little bit over, but yeah, my biggest question is, Richard, you mentioned DAOs, the decentralized autonomous organizations, and there's a lot of interesting things happening in data with BitClout, for example, where the idea behind it in theory is that you would be able to own your data and people would be able to bid and purchase your data for a fee, which in theory is awesome, because right now we are the products within consumer tech. But
I don't think that works, by the
ask,
way, but hopefully I can come back and talk about that in a moment.
Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts and everyone else's thoughts on DAOs and decentralization and the idea of self-ownership over data. Like, where are we? Because my head is spinning every day. I'm finding something new. Thank you.
The major concern that we have around the data. Hey, this is Hema, Richard. The major concern that we have is, we have a certain framework, certain expectations from organizations, at least now to a minimum extent, when they're handling patient information or person information. But we don't have any guidelines or any framework or any helpful awareness for the patients who want to handle their own data. It can be chaotic. And that have to, before giving that full access, we have to have a training and awareness campaign around what it can lead to. and what are the risks and impacts around it. Because the thing is, mindful sharing is good, but not understanding the pros and cons of it, it's very hard. For example, if I have the teenage between 18 to 25 age who are putting their personal videos, everything on TikTok and Instagram and so on. But if I say that I will give you 4 bottles of wine, just give me where do you live? What's your address? What's your, what are your tastes? We don't really give it. But I'm saying, hey, I have a free app. You can just play around with it. But in the meanwhile, I'm taking your personal information. We don't, most of the people don't even think it that way. So I think that's where the awareness comes into picture. It's very, very crucial for the society to have the awareness before we give that power into their hands.
Yeah, I would echo that. I'm not usually one for jumping in, but this is the topic. I mean, actually, we're hoping to put this into a book soon. Is that, so in my case, first of all, Michelle, they have the data already. The big companies already have it. It's not changing. My date of birth isn't changing. These kind of things. Second thing is, I feel that Google and others are going to show us all of this data and metadata that we have, and then say, look, you have complete control over it. You can choose what you want to take away and whatever, and then we will delete it permanently. And I think that's a ruse, because I think it's become less important now. And remember, this decade, we're moving from screens and apps anyway into spatial computing. We're moving into 3D computing with augmented reality, virtual reality, what might be called the metaverse, possibly. Now, the data collection of that's very different. It's a lot more. So right now, this webcam is dumb. It's not doing anything, but the camera on my phone always tracks my gaze. So as we move into the physical world with machines, it's different. Connected cars, same thing. Facial recognition, same thing. I highlight one of these, right? The Oculus Quest 2. It's a backdoor into health data. So when I wear it, it's understanding where I'm looking. It's got cameras on the outside. It's reading the room, the dimensions, the people in it, the brands that I'm looking at. It's analyzing my movement, my flexibility, my agility, my stamina over time. It's there's 8 different things you can get just from looking at my eyes. So how is the granularity of that going to be represented by a company like Google that says, I'm going to give you control over your data? Their granularity and my granularity are completely different. That's 2 million unique data points from 20 minutes of use. Where's that in GDPR?
It's there. That is there. That's in GDPR.
Enforceable?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's where we're going with this, with our certification scheme.
What about CCTV? What about Alexa in somebody else's home?
I'll tell you the thing that's the real problem in that space is actually AV is harder than VR. So VR we know that's a locked body of you and it, right? So we can track that. The difficulty is AV. So now it's me and the Google Glass, but you know who's out there? A whole bunch of other data that I'm also collecting without permission.
Yeah, but
no
this has got cameras on the outside, right? Look at everything.
That's the same problem. It's
the same problem.
It's called field of vision. Yeah. We refer to it as field
Apple
of vision
headphones
data.
are going to have cameras on them.
Right. That creates a huge problem that is not in GDPR that will have to be addressed, and it's not legally defined yet. We call it, we've defined it as field of vision because related to consent, there is none. So therefore, what right do you have it? But it's already collected. So what should they do? Like, nobody's right or wrong here because nobody's even gone yet to what this is. But I will tell you, if I'm standing with you, you've got your Oculus on, you're recording me, that's not cool that I'm in there. It's not cool, right? And so we will have to deal with that, but the law is not there yet. I mean, honestly, we're not even close.
Thanks, Ron.
But we'll tackle it. We're going to try.
I think this is one of the big problems with big data is that, whilst it's, like some people say it's like an oil of this century, but really that there's more and more and more of it instead of less and less and less, and it gets less and less useful as well. And as we're creating more and more data, the actual signals, the bits, the concepts or the information that we care about gets more and more diluted. And so it gets so much harder to manage, when there's, you've got some little bit of signal that's been diluted across some huge amount of data, trying to regulate or, put some sort of compliance on that is so difficult because it's so hard to even detect these signals. It can just sort of like slip through. And I think that one thing I've seen a little bit, and it's been talked a little bit about today, just in different ways, I think, is this concept of moving towards, I guess, instead of having, a data warehouse, having, more data as a product or data as a, data as a service, where you're, instead of collecting and storing, all the data, you instead move towards, okay, let's create some optimized, I guess, collections of data that really show specific signals. And so this idea of having some data product, which is, and I think this was mentioned before, some data with a designated use case and some designated ownership, it really then provides a structure to be able to describe what the data is for and then license it appropriately, or work out, if it's defined what signals this data is supposed to represent, and if that data has been optimized to show those particular signals, be it your movements from Oculus Rift, transformed in some way, then we can get to maybe more of a feasible task. Because the way it's going with how we store data is just not feasible. It's just too hard. There's just too much signal dilution.
Too much signal dilution, too much of redundancy and duplication of data at multiple systems and platforms, which open the gates for more vulnerabilities, right? Especially in healthcare, where you have a lot of third-party management. They are copying the PHI information on their system to process it or to analyze it. And that vendor is, again, subcontracting to another vendor to do part of the processing. So, so it's rather the one way is, as you said, Simon, the next billion-dollar market or the next big challenge that we have right now is how to transform that big data into smart data of value, data of vision, as you said, and how we can do it. And the second bigger challenge that we have that we can solve with technology is that how we can eliminate these copies of data and have a centralized location. But the challenge again is, if we have a centralized location of the data, it would become more vulnerable if we don't save it, right? So it's like a chain of challenges with pros and cons of it.
Yeah, definitely. On the note of, I guess, creating this sort of smart data, something that we look at Synthesize is trying to create different types of smart data by supplementing original data with synthetic data. And I've heard sort of synthetic data mentioned a couple of times today. I find it interesting gauging what people's opinions of synthetic data are, because as I've sort of worked with it more and more, the only difference between synthetic data and real data is that there's just one more step in the chain of numbers in a database and what they represent. Synthetic data still contains real signals. It can still contain or represent real people. It can still represent real information. And people, I guess, get a bit concerned with using synthetic data sometimes, because instead of original data, because of this sort of worry, like, oh, what if my synthetic data doesn't contain the signals that were in the original data? And the question is still the same with your original data, because your original data is still a representation of the reality. There's no real difference. And sometimes you can, we found that you can use synthetic data to actually improve the signals that you care about in the data. It's just sort of like an interesting concept. And I've sort of been thinking a lot about what you could do with synthetic data and biases as well. You know, can you sort of supplement or you know, even reduce or try to tackle some biases in data using synthetic data?
Well, sort of a manual override.
Yeah, yeah. If you have, you know, underrepresented examples, you know, you could at least synthesize some. You know, whether that then just induces more bias, you know, it's up for debate. But an interesting idea, at least, to explore.
I remember looking about a year ago, and you type in CEO into Google, and DuckDuckGo, and DuckDuckGo showed middle-aged white men, and Google showed a variety of genders and colors. And I thought, that's interesting, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even for synthetic data, the core value comes in is the diverse sets and the real time, how much we can mimic the real time. But again, it pulls in, as you said, how much of the real time data represents the diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, and all those things. So in terms of synthetic data, I think we can do better because we can include all those biases and try to mimic the information and try to put in different attributes. In which case, sometimes the real-time data is not pulled in, but you can take it from the academic studies and so on with the diverse sets. I think that's the advantage of having synthetic data on that point.
Okay. Is that a natural pause for today, do you think?
I just noticed the time.
The good conversation continues.
Yeah.
Infinitum, so we don't have to solve it all in one night.
Yeah. Can I just say, so this is my first time sort of you know, being involved with this, and it's just been a really, really great experience. So, you know, I thank you everyone for, you know, being here today. It's been truly awesome. I definitely want to, you know, be a part of any discussions or, you know, get to hear what's going on. So,
Oh, Simon, thank you for that. And the feeling's mutual. You brought so much tonight, and in the spirit as well that we try and live and breathe in, you know, of listening more than we talk and these kind of things. So thank you.
Especially over since lockdown sort of happened and we sort of got pushed away from being able to meet and engage with people, this idea of, you know, online communities is really, I feel like it's one of the best things that's come out of lockdown for sure. I feel like it is something special. I sort of feel like you get to connect with people in a much more real sense sometimes.
Yeah,
you're all there, but you don't have to be there if you didn't want to be, and it's quite nice.
I'm so happy that you say that, Simon. I feel the exactly same thing when I came here first time.
Yeah,
it was like mind blowing. It was like, whoa,
yeah.
what? Oh, really? This is awesome. I just want to be here all the time. Yeah, man. I want more and more.
Yeah.
Genius people and be connecting and sharing information. Love it. Love it. And thank you for all your all the sharing that you have done too.
Yeah.
We have to find each other. So
Yeah.
God created all of us.
Totally.
And spread us all out across the globe.
Thank you for the panelists. You know, just again mind-boggling, and for my little tiny brain, a lot to process. You know, I call myself an orphan because I think that this community has adopted me because I'm not in the AI world. I have no connection to AI technology, and yet I think it's, you know, just everywhere. So as a human, I have to, you know, be flexible enough to try to understand it enough to try to contribute a little bit from a totally lay person, absolutely totally lay person to the conversation. But I appreciate all your brilliant minds that are really working toward really what's in the best interests of humanity. I think that's a common theme, and that's, you know, really do no harm, you know, help humanity, save the planet, and you know, control this thing that we have created, and that we better guide and manage. Otherwise, it will, you know, absorb us.
Yeah, definitely.
So I wasn't the only one, Anna. Thank you. The layperson who's concerned about humanity. Yes, thank you. But I appreciate being here amongst all you
Kindred
brilliant
spirits.
people. Thank you for that. I put a link there. A couple of you talked about human connection. I run just once a month connection hour where we get together, whoever wants to come, and we talk about whatever is on our heart, minds, challenges, and I kind of facilitate a way of holding it for each other, holding the space with kindness, compassion, with wisdom. How do you hold the space for somebody else to just pour it all out or whatever, you know? So if you're interested, please join us. It'd be lovely. Second Tuesdays of every month. I put the link there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. We missed your hand, Lukman. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. My apologies. But let us know if there's anything that we can do. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night.
Good night.
Stay happy.
Good night.
Good night.
See you, folks.
Safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Be safe.
Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Ciao, ciao.
Take care.
Bye.